Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing some fall thrift flips using Roycycled's new Heirloom Pumpkins decoupage paper and IOD. For our first project, I'm going to be giving this tray a makeover. It was very sweet, but it was a little bit generic, so we are going to first of all remove the handles. I used my drill for this, and after giving it a little bit of a wipe down, I'm going to be sanding it a little bit just to remove any of the raised texture, and then I'm going to be giving it 2 coats of Dixie Belle's Drop Cloth Chalk Mineral Paint. You can find a full product list in the description below and all these products on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. You can see that I'm being careful not to get paint on the outside frame of the tray. I started off doing this because I wasn't 100% sure if I was just going to be painting the center of the tray or if I was going to leave the outside the wood tone. So I am being careful not to get paint on there to start off with. But in the end, I do decide to come in and add some paint to the frame. I'm not going for full coverage here, but I'm going to be doing a layered paint effect a little bit later. And this is something that I definitely do a bit. If I'm not sure of exactly where I'm going with a project, I will work in stages to see how I like it at the different stages, and the project will evolve. Once I finished painting the tray, I used a hairdryer to speed up the drying process in certain sections to increase the look of the texture. Next, I'm using Roycycled's new Heirloom Pumpkins paper. It comes like this, and there's also one with a stacked pumpkin design. I really like this smaller set of stacked pumpkins there, so I'm going to trim those out first. And I thought that they would look really great in the center of my tray, so I'm just sort of positioning it there to see how I like it. And then I'm going to use my scissors to very carefully cut around the pumpkins to get rid of all that extra white paper. And then I decided that I also wanted to have some of these this greenery. I think it might be dollar gum, I'm not 100% sure. It's all lovely anyway. So then I'm going to very carefully trim around those as well, and then I'm positioning the pumpkins where I want them to go and then adding some product. So you can see I've got the pumpkins in place. I don't want to shift them, so I've laid down the product and then I'm very carefully pressing the decoupage paper into the product. And once I have that anchor stripped down, I can add more product until the whole area under the pumpkins has product, and then I'm using my brush and what little product is on my brush to smooth that out. And then I am positioning the greenery on the side there, and I'm working out exactly how much I'm going to need to tear off so that it looks like the greenery is behind the pumpkin, and I'm just tearing it so it has a nice soft line. And once I've worked that out, I'll repeat the same process, laying down some product, smoothing my decoupage paper down, and then using my brush to go over the top. And I'm going to repeat the same process on the other side, tearing off the extra that I don't need and then adding that decoupage medium down. I thought about adding those little bits of wheat that you can see, but I felt like it might be a little bit too crowded, so I decided against it. Once all my decoupage elements are down, I'm going to take that same flat clear coat that I'm decoupaging with today, and I'm going to go over the top of all of that paper and the rest of the inside of the tray, just so that it's all a nice even layer. Once the flat clear coat is dry, I decided to add some of IOD's letterpress stamps to spell out the words Farm Fresh Pumpkins. So first of all, I'm laying down the letters that I'm going to need for farm, working out the spacing, and then I'm using a thin mount. I love these because they have the grid lines. So you can see here I'm repositioning the letters so that they're in the correct spot. If the back of your stamps aren't sticking well, just give them a bit of a clean. It just might mean that there's a bit of debris on there. I'm then inking up my stamp with IOD's permanent black ink, hovering the stamps where I want them to go and then carefully pressing down. Always have one hand holding them in place and then I lift them straight up. So I repeated the same process for the word fresh, and I'm just applying that stamp carefully and then pulling my stamp straight up. For the word pumpkins, I am spacing those letters out a little bit further. Always remember to leave a space for any of the letters that you have to repeat. Once I have finished stamping the word pumpkins, I'm going to grab that letter P and I'm going to put it on a smaller thin mount. I'm pressing it down with a wet wipe and then also inking that stamp back up, and then I will position it in the gap that we left and our word is finished. Next, I'm going to use some 220 grit sandpaper to lightly distress around the edges of the tray, and then I'm also going to seal the rest of the tray with that same flat clear coat. Next, I'm going to be using some of Fusion's vintage Laurel milk paint. I still had a little bit left over from a previous project, so I'm just using a chip brush to apply a light coat. We're not going for full coverage here because I am going for a layered look, so I'm going to apply it to the outside of the tray. We're just going to be adding it to the frame. I'm going to try and keep the center white, that same drop cloth that we used. If I get a little bit of overlap, that's okay, because we have already sealed that surface, so I will be able to come back in shortly with a baby wipe and remove any excess paint and soften that transition line. Once the milk paint has dried, I took a wet wipe and I went around the edges and I pulled back some of the paint. We're doing some wet distressing here to show some of that drop cloth and some of that wood tone underneath. I really love this look. It definitely feels very, very farmhouse, very worn, and it's definitely one of my new favorite things to do. So I'm just going to work my way around the tray and pull back some of that paint. To seal the milk paint, I am going to be using Dixie Belle's Best Dang Wax in Clear, and then I will buff it with a microfiber cloth. Finally, I'm going to use my drill to reattach the handles. And here's our finished tray. I'm really happy with how this turned out. That heirloom pumpkin decoupage paper is beautiful and it goes perfect with the IOD stamps. Let me know what you think of this project in the comments. Our next project is this little sign that I thrifted. I always grab these when I can because I know I can paint over them. After cleaning, I am going to use my drill to remove the hanging from the back, and then I'm going to give it 2 coats of Dixie Belle's Drop Cloth Chalk Mineral Paint. I'm going to be painting the front and the sides of this piece. While my paint is drying, I'm going to add some cornstarch to a little plastic mat that I've got there, and then I'm going to start pulling out some Jovi air dry clay. You can see I'm just shaping that a little bit, and then I'm going to grab my rolling pin and add a little bit of cornstarch to that, and I'm going to start rolling out my clay. I'm going to roll it out until it's about 2 mil thick approximately. It doesn't matter if some areas are a little bit thicker than others. All that matters is that it's approximately the right size to cover our sign. So once I have that rolled out, I'm going to very carefully pull it up from our little plastic sheet there and position it over the top of our sign. I don't want it to completely cover. I like the jagged edges there. I'm going to carefully pull off the excess. You can see that I'm tearing it. I don't want it to be perfect. We want this to look a little bit primitive, so I'm just pulling that off wherever it's overlapping. And once I have that in position, we can move on to our next step. I'm going to be using IOD's Fruitful Harvest stamp. I'm going to be using the smaller pumpkin design from that stamp, and I'm pressing that down into the clay. We're going to be creating an impression today. So I'm applying some pressure so that all of those details are going to show up, and then I'm going to carefully pull my stamp away. Now you can see some of the outlines of the stamp here, so I'm just going to use my finger to very lightly smooth out those excess lines. And then I'm going to be using another element from the Fruitful Harvest stamp, this little leaf. So I'm going to press it down, but I'm not going to press the entire thing. I only want part of that leaf to be showing, so I'm only applying pressure up the top of the pumpkin, and that way then I won't get any of the other pieces as an impression. So I'm just pressing down and then I'll carefully pull that away. And then I decided that I was going to use another element from the same stamp. So again, I'll only press down on the sections that I want to have an impression from. I don't want to ruin that little pumpkin that we've already done. And again, just using my fingers to smooth out any of those excess lines that I don't want. I'm going to add a couple of the little vines down the bottom. You can see that I've swapped to the larger leaf stamp from that pack, and I'm just playing around. I'm adjusting the different angles and working out what parts of the stamp that I want, because you don't have to use these stamps as is. You can use bits and pieces of them. Down the bottom, I still had a little bit of excess clay, so I'm just using my fingers to carefully pull off some of that excess. Again, I don't want it to be a perfect line. I want it to look jagged and primitive. To secure my clay in place, I'm going to very carefully lift up the edge, and then I'm going to apply a generous amount of a strong wood glue. I'm applying it, and then I'm going to use my finger to spread it all out so that every part of my clay will have really good contact and will be adhered well. I'm going to work in sections, being careful not to move my clay too much. We don't want it to tear, so I'm going to the other side and I'm repeating the same process. You definitely want to make sure that you have enough glue to keep that all held down. Once I have all my clay glued down, I'm going to use a wet wipe to wipe up any excess glue, and then I'm going to allow this to dry for 24 hours before moving on to my next step. And here we are the next day. You can see some cracks have formed. Now, I'm not worried about that because it goes perfectly with the look that we're going for. I'm now coming in with Dixie Belle's Drop Cloth Chalk Mineral Paint. I'm going to apply just one coat. If I didn't want those cracks to appear, I could have painted my clay before it was completely dry. It would have slowed down the drying process and I would have got less cracks. But I actually wanted the cracks for this project. When my paint was completely dry, I sealed the entire piece with Dixie Belle's Gloss Clear Coat. When my clear coat was completely dry, I used some of Dixie Belle's Au Naturel Voodoo Gel Stain. I'm just pouring a little bit out, and I'm going to use a brush to apply it to the front of my piece first. I'm going to be working in sections. You can see I'm really working it down into the details that we created with our stamp impressions, and also the edges of our clay and all those beautiful cracks. So I'm applying that, and then I'm going to use a baby wipe to dab off the excess. This is going to create a really beautiful old world sort of a look here. I'm also going to repeat the same process on the sides of the piece as well. When that was dry, I came in with Dixie Belle's Clear Best Dang Wax. Now, I did have a sealer down originally, but we have come in with another product over the top, and I want to make sure that I'm going to be able to move around my brown wax that we're going to add next. So I'm just adding this down as a little bit of insurance. I'm going to buff off the excess with a microfiber cloth. Next, I'm going to add some of Dixie Belle's Brown Best Dang Wax. I started with a larger brush and changed to a smaller one so that I could get down into all of those cracks and crevices. So I'm really working it into all of the details. And once I have it where I want it to go, I'm going to use a wet wipe again to wipe back the excess. And it is absolutely beautiful how that wax brings out the details of those IOD stamps and also the cracks and the edges of our clay. Now I could have used a brown glaze for this step instead of the wax, but I really like the intensity that this wax brings, so I felt like this was a better option. If you don't have access to this sort of wax, you could definitely use a glaze, or you could create a brown paint wash. I'm also adding that brown wax to the sides of the sign. And here's a look at our finished project. I love how this turned out. I feel like it's a really subtle, beautiful piece for Halloween or fall, and I feel like it really shows the beautiful details of those IOD stamps. Let me know what you think of this project in the comments. Our final project is this little wooden pot that I found. Now, it did have some issues with the bottom. It had started to come away, so I am going to use my nail gun to reattach it. I'm then going to be using another element from the Heirloom Pumpkins decoupage paper. I'm going to carefully trim around the outside of that little pumpkin, and then we're going to be decoupaging right onto this little pot. I actually love how it looks as it is. It looks weathered and perfect for our project today. So I'm going to apply some of Dixie Belle's flat clear coat in the section where I want the pumpkin to go, and then I'm very carefully pressing the design down with a ball of cling wrap, smoothing out any little air bubbles or wrinkles. And then I'm going to use the same Dixie Belle flat clear coat over the top and underneath any little edges that haven't been stuck down properly just yet. So this is a really quick and easy project that you can do on any sort of pot or container that you have at home. And here's a look at the finished product. This was a really quick and easy project to do. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. I really hope that you enjoyed today's video. I had a lot of fun using Roycycled's new Heirloom Pumpkins decoupage paper and IOD stamps. Let me know if you had a favorite project from today. If you enjoyed today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button, comment, and share it out to a friend that you think might enjoy it. If you haven't already, I would love it if you could hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of our videos. You can find the products used today on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. Thanks for watching.